you would know. So we are now live now. Okay, so I'm going to switch the microphones over to the radio station show so you will be able, might not be able to hear me until the radio station show starts.
Okay.
9. Winterville, Ayden, Grifton, Southside, Greenville, North Carolina.
I try to be a better man, but folks just don't understand. Trying to do all I can to deal with this addiction in me. Lord, I want to change. I can't stay the same. But the sins that in my vein, it's trying its best just to kill me.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a special episode here of the UTurn Show. I am your host, Richard Taylor, here at Awesome Radio 106.9 FM, WBISLP. Here today for a special impromptu episode. But make sure if you haven't already gone to our website, www.wbisawesomeradio.org, and download all of our apps on the Google Play, the Alexa, and also the Apple Store. And also remember, this is a call-in show, live call-in. So if you do want to call in, let me put the number up there. The number is 252-756-2008. And also, this show is live on GPAT 23 here in Greenville, Winterville area, as well as the Roku TV. So I have a special guest tonight. I know it's not normally the night that we do the show, but it was an incident that happened last week that drew my attention. So we're going to welcome mother and son, Mrs. Lee Pettyjohn, and her son, Braxton Pettyjohn. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thank you.
Doing great. Thank you guys for coming. And just a little bit of background of the story. Someone brought some attention to me about an incident that happened in the Winterville, North Carolina, which is, I think it's a subsection of Greenville or neighboring town of Greenville, where a young man was pretty much harassed and detained by the police department. And since I've experienced that so many times, I felt compelled to reach out to the mother and the son who were, pretty disturbed and upset about this incident. So I wanted them to come on the show to give their side of the story, since the police chief of Winterville thought it necessary to address their concerns through a Facebook post. And we'll get into that later. But I'm just here to let them tell their side of the story so we can get an in-depth insight on what really happened in contrast to, what the police chief put on his Winterville Police Department's Facebook page. So, Braxton, I'm gonna let you tell the story on how did this all come about, and what happened on, I think it was last Tuesday night.
Yes. So last Tuesday, August 23rd, I was about 1 a.m. I was driving home from work, and for about a mile straight, I was driving behind an undercover Winterville police car. And during the drive, they repeatedly brake checked and intentionally drove about 15 to 20 miles under the speed limit on the way to my street. And then once we arrived on my street, I made a turn in the cul-de-sac and parked in front of my house. And then that's when they initiated the stop.
Okay. So they were actually driving in front of you.
Yes, for a good at least a mile.
And so they actually turned in your neighborhood in front of you as well.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So you got to your house and you were sitting in the car and the police just walk up to your car.
Yes.
All right. And what did they say initially?
So Officer Ellis walked up to my car. He didn't identify himself. He didn't give the reason for the stop. He just walked up, spoke in an aggressive manner. What are you doing? And what are you doing? And then proceeded to ask for my ID.
All right. And so what was your response when he asked you what are you doing?
I told him I don't answer questions. I used my constitutional right to remain silent.
Oh, okay. And what was his reaction to that? Do you think?
He didn't appreciate it. He didn't, even though he took an oath to uphold the Constitution, he didn't appreciate me using my rights to remain silent. And he asked repeatedly, even after I said I'm going to remain silent, he proceeded to ask several more questions until he then asked for my ID.
Oh, okay. So when you gave him your ID, and what happened next?
So I asked if I can reach for it, and then I gave him my ID, and then he walked back to his car, and then as that was going on, a backup car containing Officer Santiago arrived on the scene.
Okay, so he called for backup, and you hadn't done anything. He just called for backup, and what happened when the backup came?
So Officer Santiago came up to my window, saw I was recording. He, threw up a peace sign and then asked, "What's my problem?" And then when I told him the same thing I told Officer Ellis, that I don't answer questions. He then laughed and then walked off.
Okay.
And then I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And then for a good 10, I would say about 5 to 10 minutes is they were running my license and my plates, and the whole stop lasted about 10 minutes.
All right. So at what point did you ask them for their identification?
So towards the end of the stop, when Officer Santiago came back to my car after he had walked off and laughed, when I asked him for his name and badge number, he said, "I don't answer questions." So as a police officer, he verbally refused to identify himself, even though he's legally required to.
Mm-hmm. So basically, he was taunting you for using your constitutional right to not answer questions. So how did it end? Did you go ahead?
So about 10 minutes later, another officer, Officer Majidi, who was riding in the undercover car with Officer Ellis, he came back to my car and just said, "Here's your ID." He didn't give me a reason for the stop. So then I proceeded to ask him, what was I pulled over for? Did I commit a crime? And after I pretty much repeated the same question 3 times, then he finally admitted, in an exasperated tone, he said, "You didn't commit a crime. You weren't pulled over for a crime." And then I asked him for his name and badge number, and then he provided it. So out of all 3 officers, Officer Majidi was the only one to provide his name and badge number.
Okay. And so when you went back into the house, what did you do?
So I went and told my mom about the situation.
Okay. And Mrs. Pettyjohn, you're the mom, right?
That's correct. Uh-huh.
And so when your son walks in the house and tells you what was going on, what did you think? How did you react?
Well, before he walked in, I saw his vehicle and at the beginning, I didn't realize it was his vehicle, but I saw his vehicle. So my daughter and I saw the latter part of what was taking place. So I'm ready. I'm like, what's going on? I'm ready to come outside to see what's going on anyways. But at that point, he's coming in the house. So he shared with me what happened. And I know my child, my young man, and so you didn't do anything. And he was clear. I didn't do anything. I didn't get a ticket because I didn't do anything. And so at that point, I'm like, well, what is their name? When he shared with me that they refused, 2 of the 3 refused to tell him their names, I just simply wanted to know their names. It wasn't even at that point, I knew a lot, but I didn't really, all I wanted to know is who they were. So I stepped out in our cul-de-sac because they were parked in the cul-de-sac. And as I'm walking over to the cul-de-sac, it took Braxton maybe 2 minutes to share a little bit about what had happened. He comes back outside, thankfully, and he's recording from our yard. And I walked up to the officers and officers, I'd like to know what happened with my son. Didn't know his name at that time, but later when I asked, Officer Ellis said, so what happened with your son? So that same taunting, spirit. Now, I didn't know that had taken place with my son. So it was very clear that it was it was just a exact same communication that he was having with me, a grown 56-year-old woman. Not that he should have had that conversation in tone with my son, but I asked him again what happened, and he repeated my question again and never answered me. And I said, are you not going to tell me why you stopped my son? And he didn't say a word. And so at that point, I said, can you tell me your names, please? They both had their hands on their gun. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say it's dark. They didn't know what I was coming for, but that to me was enough for me. You need to go in the house now. And I clearly did. They gave me their names. It concerned me. So at that point, after I had got the names, the 3rd officer, he was gone. As soon as I started walking, he left. So there was just the one vehicle there. Braxton's recording, which is good to make sure that nothing bizarre or, worse is happening. And then I came on inside and he told me more about what happened. And at that point, I got more and more infuriated about how my son was treated.
Mm-hmm. And so what did you do the next day?
So before the next day, what I did that night at roughly 3 o'clock, because that's how my mind works. I was upset. I was on Facebook and I started, sharing what just happened with my son. Wow, Facebook friends, this is what just happened. And I shared what happened. And so, I got about an hour or 2 of sleep. I think too much. And so my mind kept taking me to this place of, my son was right outside of our house. What if he wasn't? What if he was in a remote area of town and the situation went into a whole nother realm? So it was very difficult for me to get to sleep. So went to sleep. I woke up. I called first thing that morning, the police station. And I said that I wanted to speak with, I didn't ask for the chief at that time. I just wanted to speak with someone because my son had a situation. And even though I had obtained the names of the officers, they refused to tell him their names. So it was really more of, this is wrong. He shouldn't have never been stopped. End of story. But it didn't end there because I didn't realize that as I called, then I went in to make a formal complaint because that's what the gentleman on the phone said. Are you wanting to make a complaint? I said, actually, I am, because how my son was, not just how my son was treated, but how the officers interacted with me, it was inappropriate. And one, they should have told him their name. So I filed a report and it took me probably 6 or 7 minutes to write everything out. They asked for the details. I was standing in the lobby doing that. And I left the police station at 1:07. I know the exact time because I had to make a call. And as I got back home, and as family and friends shared with me hours later, at 1:12 p.m., the chief of police had gone to Facebook, not replied to me, When I was there asking for him, I was told he was in a meeting, but 7 minutes later, he was on Facebook leaving a very lengthy message covering his officers. So if you were going to do an investigation to see what happened, why didn't these officers tell this young man their names? Why are you now on Facebook creating a whole other scenario about what took place?
Leaking information from a supposed investigation.
Yeah, and that's one thing that a lot of people, and if anybody wants to go read this post, you can go to the Winterville Police Department post. I think it happened on August the 23rd, if I'm not mistaken, and you will see, the post and also the comments and people responding to it, which was once again very inappropriate because this woman has just formed a formal complaint, and that should be handled with care, not through public opinion. So it's obvious that this police chief is in the business of covering his officers now. And you said in your post, I think you said that he had gotten stopped once again. So this wasn't the first time that your son has been stopped.
That is correct. He was stopped several years ago. At that time, it's been several years, but if I remember correctly, he was rolling through a stop sign. So that is stop worthy. I give you that. So he was stopped. We don't remember the officer's name. However, it was an almost identical scenario of mocking him and laughing at him. And I think he had gone to play basketball. Why are you sweating? And it was just a very bizarre interaction. He didn't get a ticket. If he truly had, and he thinks he may have. So we're not about let's be upset and frustrated and disrespect the police. We are very respectful of police and of authority, but what we don't respect is an officer who is disrespectful and not upholding the law that he's supposed to hold. And so, yes, he was stopped before in a very taunting manner. Young man at that time, maybe 16 or 17. So that's a whole different, didn't even pursue anything at that point. It's like, you know what? They didn't give you a ticket. You might have gone through. So we just blew it off. This is repeating. What are you just stopping people for?
How old are you, Braxton?
I'm 20.
20. Okay. And you're a college student, right?
Yes, sir.
And you have a job. So you're not out committing crimes. You're not out, just hanging around doing anything wrong, correct?
Yeah.
And you actually and this is why, this is so unique as well. You actually had dash cam footage of the whole entire interaction, right?
Yes.
And why, I asked you this before the but why do you have a dash camera of your own?
Well, mainly just for personal protection in regards to car accidents, potential car accidents, mainly for insurance liability. But it ended up working out in this situation, having it.
Yeah, it did. So, and what did y'all do with that entire that footage that that captured the whole incident on tape?
You said
we still have it. We still have the footage. We don't know what direction we are going to go in having to use it. And so, we're also in the process of getting the full body cam from the officers, because I know a lot of times things can happen in front of the civilian, but then there's communication and conversation when you leave and you go back to your police car. And I think we have a right to hear what took place that night and get to the true bottom of why my son was pulled over. And actually, we have a right to hear from the chief of police versus a blanket Facebook post. That within itself was extremely disrespectful.
Yeah, definitely. And go ahead, Mr. Braxton.
And also two things. So drawing a blank. I'm sorry. I was just thinking of it.
Take your time. Take your time.
You can continue while I'm sorry about
Okay. Well, yeah, it'll come back to you. It
that.
happens to me all the time, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, I knew what I wanted to ask." But so definitely, but actually, the news actually reached out to you guys as well. WITN and WNCT, they reached out to you in order to get your side of the story.
Yes, they both did. They both reached out immediately. They wanted to come to the home and get our side of the story. At one of the stations, WITN, was not able to he wasn't hearing back from the chief of police for some time, and so he said that he really couldn't just put one side out on the news
Okay.
until he heard
Okay.
back, and he finally did hear back. um, the chief of police did not want to go on camera. However, he did. He shared in the news report to both of the stations that in the end he shared that his officers did not do the right thing.
Oh, he
That's what
did
I was gonna
finally
He
say.
say
did.
that. See, that's the one thing I haven't heard him or heard of him saying, because everything that I saw in that Facebook post was putting the blame on Braxton, putting the blame on parents, putting the blame on, break-ins in the area, all of those things, and uh, somewhat making it seem like Braxton or you was the problem instead of, the officers bothering a young man who got out of his car, or who didn't get out of his car when he pulled, as soon as he pulled up to his house after a long night's work. So I guess that's a little heartening to hear that he did finally come out and say that his officers did the wrong thing, because everything that I read from his post, and I may read that exact post if you don't mind after the break, to just get people's to show people, what kind of mindset that you guys were greeted with when you felt like you were done wrong by the police. So we're coming up on our first station break in about 30 seconds, but yeah, I may read that post just to give the audience a little bit of how you felt, because once again, I know you were outraged by seeing that, and your complaint hasn't even been heard. So we're going to come right back in about 1 minute with Mrs. Lee Petty John and her son, Mr. Braxton Petty John, right here on Awesome Radio 106.9 FM. Y'all still stay tuned with us. We're going to be right back.
Time and season is everything. It's never too late to learn. You can now enroll at Kim International Bible College. Don't miss your chance to start on the journey you've been waiting for. This is an awesome way to grow and study the Word of God. We offer online day and evening classes. This is not only a great opportunity for leaders in the kingdom, but also an opportunity for any born-again believer who just want to know more about the God you serve. We offer open enrollment, so therefore you can enroll at any time. Don't miss this opportunity. Have you been out of school for many years? No problem. Are you not good with technology? Not a problem. Don't allow your age to restrict you from your goal. We have students of all ages. We're a college that will work with you. That's our motto. We will work with you, but we expect you to do the work. So what are you waiting for? Contact us today. 252-446-0842. That's 252-446-0842. Or visit our website, www.kemibc.com. KEMIBC.com. 252-446-0842.
Lord, I hope this ain't your plan for me to die up in these streets. Oh Lord, can you help me?
And we are back here at 106.9 Awesome Radio FM, here with another impromptu episode of the UTurn Show with special guests Mother Lee Petty John and son Braxton Petty John, telling about their experiences here on here in Winterville with the Winterville Police Department. Just a few comments I do want to read. How you doing, Jerry Baker and Patrick Williams? Thank you guys for tuning in. Glad to know that Braxton is well informed of his rights. Sad this is the world we live in. when some officers of the law abuse their authority and disregard your civil liberties. I definitely thank you for that comment. That is so true. And once again, I'm glad that you know those rights, and a lot of people, don't like to use those rights for fear of retribution. But and now is that a stance you always take when encountering law enforcement? Because I assume you don't encounter them much, because I can't imagine you being in a position to encounter law enforcement a lot. But is that your normal stance on speaking with law enforcement?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. And once again, I'm going to read this because I just want the audience to know the insensitivity and the harshness, the coarseness that this Winterville police chief gave to this young man and his mother regarding their complaint. Real quick, and tell me which part of this, I guess, infuriated you the most. But you guys can listen to this. Citizens, there are two sides to every story you hear regarding the police and what they do or don't do. Today was one of those times that I must ask for y'all to step into the shoes of your officers. I will refrain from using names, locations, or other identifying characteristics, as it is a sensitive issue at the moment. Let us first start that within any neighborhood in Winterville that has had vehicles broken into during the night should be able to relate. First of all, let's stop there, because according to you, nobody has been breaking in vehicles in your neighborhood, right?
I asked 8 neighbors, and none of us are aware of that taking place.
Okay, so that's just a blatant, once again, way that police use to justify targeting or harassing people. But I'm going to continue. I said I wasn't going to stop until I finished, but that point just jumped out to me because I remember you saying that the police department is working hard to prevent this and are encouraged by citizens and leadership of the town to provide presence and prevent further crime. On this particular morning at 1 a.m., our officers observed an occupied vehicle in a neighborhood that has been victimized prior. From a distance, the officers observed the vehicle come to a stop and no one exit the vehicle to go inside a residence. What do you do as police? Do you drive away as not to offend someone? Do you drive away because you are scared? Do we just hope that the vehicle has not dropped off 3 others out on foot to rummage through everyone's vehicles? Or should we try to determine if all is safe and the folks they belong there at 1 a.m.? We did the latter, and we will continue to do so. We did exactly what a reasonable person would expect the police to do at 1 a.m. while most folks are asleep. We got out to speak to the driver or any other occupants to determine their business if they belong to the neighborhood. The driver, an adult male, will not communicate with our officers and stated he did not answer questions. This behavior, although legal, not only makes our job more difficult, but time consuming and often more unpleasant for everyone involved. A better route, and better is capitalized, a better route to this encounter would have been, I just got off work and I live here. The conversation ends, everyone is satisfied, all is good, and police involvement over. This actually raises suspicion and concern among the officers. Once again, my question is, how is somebody exercising their legal right, raising suspicions? And lastly, we are scolded by a mother who thought that we had wronged her son. She demanded to be shown what happened to her son. Nothing happened other than someone, this is another underhanded shot. Someone has taught this young man to resist communication. And you see the word resist, right? They make it seem like we're doing something wrong by exercising our constitutional right. That this behavior is noble, real, or some other adjective narrative. Some justice should be fired. On the contrary, we commend our officers for having the courage to approach an occupied vehicle at 1 a.m. with an unknown intent to protect lives and property. Lastly, we were scolded by a mother who deemed her son was wrong. He demanded to show what happened. She, like so many others, demanded names and badge numbers. Sadly, we have body cameras that show exactly what was and how it said. The rudeness and rudeness and attitude of lost composure in most cases is not by our police officers. Lastly, my door is always open to discuss how we do what we do. So that's all I'm going to read. But this is clear right here where the police put the blame on you. What most aggrieves you about that statement from the police?
Oh, for which
Either
one?
one,
Either one.
either one of you. What most gets under your skin? Because the whole thing got under my skin. But
I would say
Mainly,
every single. Go ahead.
no, you could.
I would say, like you said, every single line got under my skin. It just the whole undertone. It was intended to. If I didn't know any better, and I read this, it was purpose to put out there to get ahead of what had happened and those who didn't have any clue with what happened. So every single paragraph covering, we salute these hardworking officers. I salute hardworking officers as well. So
yeah.
it was almost putting a divisive, we have these people over here that listen and answer questions, but then if you don't. So what he did was he shared what my son's legal right was, then he went on to say what was better. So you berated him for having the right to not answer any more questions. So that's an oxymoron. It was just so many different layers and levels, but the thing that got me even more than all of that is he didn't take my complaint as serious as it was. In fact, he called me a scold. I went to scold.
Yeah.
So did I scold or did I file a formal complaint?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I
And another
demanded to
thing,
know the officers' names, and that's what I should have done. So the whole tone and the whole message was to put out a narrative of my son being uncooperative, and the officers were looking out for us and themselves. And that's not what happened. Because if that's what happened, the chief of police would not have said to both television stations, I agree, my officers didn't do the right thing. Well, can you tell Braxton and Braxton's mom that they didn't do the right thing? Because we haven't heard that yet. I heard it on the news, but my son hasn't got an apology for what happened that night.
and another thing is that whole Facebook post was just a one-sided narrative because he conveniently didn't mention that his officers brake checked several times. He also didn't mention that the fact that they were aggressive first. Well, the fact they were exclusively aggressive. There was no aggression on both sides. Just me practicing my constitutional right, me choosing to remain silent. There was no aggression. There was nothing illegal about that. The fact that the chief decided to write a full novel worth of, a
Yeah.
novel of, emotional, basically basing just spewing emotionalism, that shows the professionalism of the Winterville Police Department.
Yeah. And that officer Ellis, right? That was the one who initially came to your car. I've heard from a few different sources that this is not his first time. Are you guys aware of that as well?
I wasn't aware of it until I'll speak on that because I made the post. So it seems that a lot, and Braxton is rarely on Facebook. I get a lot of the Facebook messages. So I have 7 messages of different people, 5 videos that were sent to me. Hey, is this the same officer? And when I saw his face, and then they said, this is Officer Ellis. Almost identical, following young children at a playground, just following them, taunting them, stops and holding people in knee. I mean, it's the exact same officer each time. And so from what I'm hearing, what I thought was an isolated situation that as a mom, I didn't appreciate.
We got to
seems
take
to
our
be a
last
history.
break. Just 1 minute. We'll be right back. We have to take our last break. 106.9.
Pitt Community College, Pitt NC Works Career Center, and Pitt County DDS are partnering with Bethel Workforce Development Center, 7449 North Main Street, Bethel. Every Thursday from 10 o'clock a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m., staff will be available to provide Bethel residents with educational opportunities, resource assistance, training opportunities, and employment opportunities. Megaforce will be offering on-site job interviews interviews. That's every Thursday, 10 o'clock a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. For more information, the contact number is 252-818-0020. 252-818-0020. People are looking for jobs, and jobs are looking for people.
Can you save me?
Yes, and we are back for our last segment here on 106.9 Awesome Radio. Sorry about that. That last break snuck up on me real quick because I was so into the conversation. Real quick, I feel if the chief can take the time to make a statement before the complaint was investigated, he should also make a statement on the department FB page with the same statement he made to the news station. That's definitely correct, Mr. Baker, man. I certainly appreciate you for tuning in. Now, what were you saying about that officer again before the break?
Just in essence, that he is the exact same officer who different individuals have inboxed me and sent videos of this Officer Ellis following young children at the playground and harassing them, stops with no reasoning behind it and refusing to say his name at first and then finally saying his name, and that silly, immature laughing when people are trying to have a conversation about what is happening. So what I was saying is that what I thought was an isolated situation that happened with our son truly is a history of some years with this same Officer Ellis. And that's what I'm just not clearly understanding is as to why this officer has this repeat behavior, but he's still an officer.
Mm-hmm. And you said as of now, as of today, the chief hasn't responded to you, hasn't responded to your complaint, hasn't reached back out to you. In no way, shape, form, or fashion?
Zero. We have no communication, not when I first submitted the complaint. And so, if Facebook is what his mode of communication is, and he said what he said to the police, or rather to the news station, he hasn't even reached out on Facebook beyond this post. And so we've got no communication. I think what we're supposed to be believing now is that this investigation that we've asked to happen. So I think there's a pretense that there's an investigation going on, and that's why he's not reaching out. Well, if the investigation was going on, you would not have written this Facebook post 7 minutes later. So it's it's very bizarre.
We know what happens when they investigate themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And that's once again the problem, and that's the problem in a lot of these local small town police departments and sheriff departments. Is that's what they happen. I've been to the sheriff department in Goldsboro, mind you, but Goldsboro and Greenville kind of remind me of each other. But I take complaints down there, and I'm like, okay, who gets this complaint? And they're like, well, we give it to this guy, and we give it to another guy, and he takes. So I was like, okay, so this complaint never leaves this station, and they like, no. So I'm like, all right, I can expect not to hear from you guys, and I haven't really heard of any complaints that I filed on behalf of others in the community. So I applaud the effort of filing complaints, but once again, when the complaints are in the hands of the people who actually commit the offense, then what sort of justice can we expect, especially about that? So what do y'all hope to get out of the complaint?
Well, I feel that that's the initial stages. So we were advised to file the complaint because that's the formal way to do things. And so we're in the process of just weighing our options. I said it before, and a week later, I still hold very strong that this didn't have to go the direction that it has. However, it's gone in this direction. And I feel 100% that my son's civil rights were infringed upon. And so we're seeking counsel.
Mm-hmm. Now, also, because I know you mentioned your husband. Now, you mentioned he was asleep. How did he feel about it?
I mean, when he has to get up at 5 for work, and so when he learned about it the next day, it was a very somber situation because as an African American man talking to our young man, African American man, this is the reality that we live in. I don't know if you and the viewers caught something that my son said, and it brings tears to my eyes till this day. But he's a smart young man. When the officer said to get your license, he said, "I'm going to reach for it," because that's what we have to do. He was told to give him his license, but he knew enough not to reach for it without letting them know. That's the story. That's the world that we live in. And so, he just shared with him the world that we live in. We're not anti-police officers. I have police officers in my family. And I reading the narrative as though we're just this disrespectful family. We bring a lot to this community, work related, volunteer related. So we're not just this family that, you're not going to tell us what to do. We don't have any respect for officers. That couldn't be any further from the truth. And so my husband's stance is exactly what myself and my son's stance is that we're not going to lay down and let this happen. It's not acceptable, period. There is no comma there. What happened is absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah. And I noticed that too, but and I hate to admit that, I don't like that narrative, whereas, we have to be, afraid almost, but we have to be careful. Let's put it that way. We have to be extra careful than others. And the only comment I did make on that post, and everybody don't want to make it about race, but once as he clearly plainly stated indirectly, because you see all of the shootings, all of the unarmed black men getting shot because they reach for their wallet, they reach for their cell phone, or I do have a gun but it's in the holster, I'm telling you I have a gun, and they still get shot. I see, initially, just like you saw, but at first, most of the people that I saw who were praising or supporting the police officers in this instance were Caucasians, and most of the police officers that were more understanding of your point of view and Braxton's right to exercise his constitutional rights were African Americans. So there's this almost divided perception, because that is the world we live in. Black are unfortunately treated as suspects or as suspicious or as criminals in most cases with law enforcement, where what whites are more apt to be able to use their constitutional right. No, why are you pulling me over? No, I'm not going to give you my license registration. No, I'm not going to give you no information. Do you know who my father is? Do you know who my uncle is, the judge? He's going to have your badge. Only Caucasians are allowed to use those constitutional rights. When my brother Braxton does it, he's considered as disruptive, rude, disorderly, resisting. You see what the chief said? You have taught your son to resist communication. No, he's not resisting. He's exercising his constitutional right just as anybody else does. However, in the later comments, and just like you said, there were Caucasians also agreeing that yes, we do have those rights, and those rights should be respected no matter what color, creed, race, sex, orientation, all of those things. All of these civil liberties should be respected equitably and equably. So once again, that's just my take on the situation. How much support have you guys received, from the community after this incident has taken place?
I would say a tremendous amount of support. Majority of people I don't even know, because when I saw the message from the chief, I made my post. where others beyond my friend group on Facebook could see it. And so the comments are not, a lot of people are not even in our area, and just, wow, we're here for you. What can we do? In addition to the news stations, the council, this is an infringement, how can we help? And so, and then again, the other people who have experienced the same or similar situations. So I feel like I'm just one of those people who feel like at some point in life, what's done in the dark will come to light. And that might be the time that's happening now. Not that it was our intent. It truly was. What in the world? Who are you? Who are these officers that refused to give my son their names? And now we are a week later, way deeper than it had to be. And so I think my family has taken this stance that, it's got to stop. It's got to stop, because I say it and I feel it, and I know he was right outside of our house. They didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But what if he wasn't? That thought haunts me, literally. And so it's got to stop. There are a lot of Officer Ellis's who feel as though they can get away with it, because clearly they have. When the chief immediately is going to your defense and writing messages, that's got to stop too. So I at this point I feel like I'm rambling. It's enough is enough. Like, for real, enough is enough. And so not my son, and not anybody else's son either.
And to add to that support point, I'm not sure if you checked the post recently. It has over 300 shares and over 1,000 comments. So it's like, and most of the extreme majority of the recent comments are in support, of support. So, and it's people from all around. It's not even just Winterville. So it's gaining ground.
Yeah, and I saw it too. Like I said, after the first day, I said I'm not finna keep going through all of this, because I keep seeing ignorant people saying yes, this, that, and the other. But then I see a outpouring of support too. So I'm like, okay, well, some people are just gonna have their views, and then some people are, gonna be on the right side of right. Some people gonna be on the side of the law, whether they're right or wrong, because they have that perception. Whatever police says goes, or whatever police does, you have to go for it, which is not all the way true. Police officers are human. They are human beings. They have their own prejudices. They have their own biases. Or even good police officers could just have a bad day, and they could just want to be a little aggressive, be a little taunting. So we have to understand that, especially when people are saying that, yeah, this happened, no, I didn't do anything. Yes, I did exercise my right, but I have also the right to, ask who you are and why did you stop me and why did you pull me over? So that's something that, a lot of people are not willing to do. So once again, I applaud you for knowing your rights and exercising those rights, because a lot of people don't. And there is just a overwhelming frequency of this, because once again, I just got sent a video yesterday of a young man in Winterville who was handled roughly, to say the least, by Winterville police officers. And so what are you going to use those other videos as well to kind of point to the chief, so that, hey, look, this is what's been going on, if you ever have that conversation, because according to his message, his door is open to discuss it.
I don't feel that, the videos as well. I don't feel that he has ears to hear. So, every boss has a boss. And so, it may just not be him that we need to bring this information to. So that's the stance, that showing him, what it depends on the lens that you see through. He showed me the lens that he sees through when I filed a complaint, and he immediately made this Facebook post. So I'm not real motivated for him to see those videos.
I understand. I definitely understand. So Braxton, so how, because of hopefully, you don't have to go through this any longer, or again, so how did this experience change your perception of what to do if you encounter law enforcement again?
Well, it pretty much reinforced it. you know, to always record, you know, dash cam, you know, cell phone video, asking their name and, you know, badge number, always having documentation.
Oh, so actually, so you had the dash cam, but you also, when you got pulled over, pulled out your cell phone too. Is
Yeah,
that correct? So you have
yeah,
actually two kind of videos to show what's going on. And did they ever tell you to stop recording?
no.
Oh, okay. Did they ask were you recording, or did they make a big deal about that? Because I know sometimes they do.
Well, they didn't make a big deal, but the backup officer, Officer Santiago, he when he walked up to my window and saw I was recording, he threw up the peace sign and started, you
Start
know,
antagonizing.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, I just appreciate y'all for coming on, the show tonight, and giving the people insight of what happened. Like I said, I've shared that post, and I know a lot of people I know who are on the supportive right, just really, are disgusted, by first of all what happened, but also by the response. So I just want to commend you guys for coming on and sharing your story, and you know we once again, I know I stand behind you because I've experienced that for so long. I'm 44 years old, and it started with me at 18 with the profiling, with the the stops and turning around, and uh just an example of how they can use something. I was driving one day, and the officer saw me. As soon as he saw me, he turned around and got behind me, and when he got behind me, he pulled me over for and a license tag light. And I don't know, I've never heard of this before, but there's a light over your license tag. It's two of them. One of mine was out, right? So I said, okay, you pulled me before that, but you couldn't see that before you turned around. So why did you turn around when you saw me? So it's the little things like that that they can hide behind when it's truly profiling, like this officer. And at that time I was driving, a big car with, the rims and the tinted windows and things like that. Nevertheless, I wasn't involved in any crime. That's the kind of car I decided to drive. But that let me know. And when I asked him, I said, why'd you pull me over? He had, why? No, I said, why'd you turn around? There was no answer, but I knew the answer. So I say that to say that I understand, and I hope we can avoid those situations. You can avoid those situations in the future, but if there are situations like that, I pray that you will continue to handle them like you did. So once again, I want to thank y'all for coming out. Is there anything left that you guys want to share with our audience before you go?
I don't believe so.
Nothing
Okay.
additional, no.
Nothing additional. Okay.
And
So
I
definitely,
well,
uh-huh,
one
go ahead.
thing that Facebook post will definitely backfire. You know, he intended. I don't think he intended it to get this much publicity and attention and this much backlash against it. You
Yeah.
know, all that emotional, vitriol based, rhetoric that he was using. So, it's definitely going to backfire.
Yeah, and it's just so many, like you said, so many underlying shots and underlying, like you said, vitriol. So much, just venom, towards you, and so much praise towards the officer. So, we encourage. I don't. It's just so deep. Are you guys from North Carolina originally?
Originally from
No,
Texas.
we moved from Texas.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if Texas Texas is any better. I've heard stories about Texas too, but what I don't know, Texas or North Carolina, take your pick. But something about this, I understand we are still in the South, and the South, has a reputation of being discriminatory or even prejudice, and not all of the South, and not all police stations, not all police departments, but there is too many. I'll say that because one is too many in the year of 2022 that we're living in, where we keep having these issues where young working class, young educated young college students are being profiled and harassed when they pull up to their house, and police officers use all manner of justification to support their actions when there really is no justification but bias, prejudice, discriminatory actions and things like that. So once again, I thank y'all for tuning in on this impromptu show. We will be back next Tuesday for the regular U-turn, but I certainly want to thank my guests once again, Mrs. Pettyjohn and her son Braxton, for taking the time out to show and tell your story. If there's anything that I can do in the future to help, just let me know. And once again, we just thank y'all for showing, for tuning in. Thank our radio audience as well. We're going to be back with y'all next week. Make sure you guys tune in.
Lord, I need you to